for those who were most upset about the journalism, that's what I was on board with. And I had several discussions with other journalists that had written things against GamerGate, gamer journalists. Like, well, that is such a narrow thing. You are focusing on a sliver of what this movement's really about. I think I don't really know if that's true. I mean, when you look at the level, you have so many people that have no other choice. There's only several major gaming websites, and you guys have a shitty policy about actually engaging your audience. One of the things that you learn in SPJ, and we have boring sessions on it when we go to conventions, right? I mean, it's like how to engage your audience, how to get them to talk back to you. Because the one thing we've learned over the years is the people who hate the media the most are the ones who never talk to a reporter, right? If you actually have conversations, if you have exchanges with them on Twitter or X, whatever the hell they're calling it these days, if you have in the comments section, there's a back and forth discussion, you're less likely to assume they're all jerks. But Kotaku and Polygon and there was no engagement of their readers. It's almost like the gaming press reminded me of prostitutes and Johns, because I've interviewed prostitutes before. I've known a couple. There's this weird thing about prostitutes and Johns in that both of them think the other one is totally pathetic, right? A prostitute thinks that guy that's paying me for sex, what a loser. And the guy that's buying the sex from the prostitute thinks like, what a whore. So they have this huge disrespect gap that I have never seen in any other professional arrangement except for gaming journalist and gaming reader or viewer, right? I mean, like the gaming journalists, when I would talk to gaming journalists, they were like, my audience is a bunch of fucking assholes. And when I would talk to GamerGate people, they were like, those journalists are fucking assholes. And I would ask both of them, well, how many of the other have you talked to? Oh, none. Well, that's a problem. So I don't, we started after SPJ Airplay, we actually ran for several years the first ever Gaming Journalism Awards. And that to me was more fun than Airplay and mattered more because SPJ didn't want to do it. And I had to vote but we did it and we stopped doing it because after 5 years, we finally got two things to happen. One, SPJ now has video games as a category in their normal contest because we don't have to do the bastardized contest anymore. You can apply and win an award, both college and pro, for gaming coverage. And the second thing that happened is the Washington Post actually hired a gaming journalist, and other mainstream publications started to do that. And that made things a little better because then they had to hew to the same standards as when you cover the city commission or a football team. So, maybe one reason that some of this has died down, not only that, shit gets boring after a while, but I wonder if things also got better a little bit. But you'll tell me. I mean, I don't know. What happens now? I mean, the media, the outrage at the coverage, the unethical shit that happened. Is it your perception that the coverage of games is there any better, or is it more diverse?
I
What's your
think it
opinion?
I think it kind of mostly died because video and streaming became so popular in the past 10 years that, and especially like in the past 5 years, that like if people want to find out about a video game, they can just watch a YouTube video and see the actual gameplay themselves and see the story and like make a decision about if they want to buy it based on that. But I think that there still is like a use for games journalism, and I think that good text-based journalism could be really interesting to read. But I don't know if it's gotten much better or not. I know that some companies have updated their ethics policies, and some companies did actually issue like retractions to articles that we found that were corrupt or contained things that they shouldn't, like unethical ethical violations, things like that. So I think it got a little bit better, but I think also it became a lot less relevant because of video.
I think that's actually true. One thing I found really interesting is when we started the Kunkel Awards, named after the first video game journalist. We actually got his permission from his estate to use his name. Is that over the 5 years, 4 or 5 years we did this contest, that a lot of the winners were people we never heard of. Like people, they weren't journalists by trade. They were committing an act of journalism. They were doing a stream, and it just happened to be really good, and it was still journalistic. And then even the ones that were bad, because they were just opinions without facts. But it occurred to us that what was happening was out of GamerGate, one of the positives, I think, was that you had a number of people like you saying, well, fuck it, I can do my own stream. If Nidar Sarkeesian can do it, I can do it. So then what you had is just more opinions out there. It didn't matter. It doesn't matter to me whether they're good or bad or egregious or stupid. But when you have enough opinions out there, I think it just calms people down because they feel like there's a place they can be heard. I know there's this argument that, one of the arguments for the good old days when there was only several newspapers and a few TV stations is, we were all bonded together. Now you can exist in your own little bubble. Well, you could always exist in your own little bubble. It's easier today, but hopefully those bubbles, there's so many bubbles that they kind of smash together every so often and pop and join forces, that if there are Gamergate people from back in the day that felt shut out, that they just kept reading and watching all these opinions that pissed them off. Even if I agree with all the opinions of the people they hate, and I disagree with all of their opinions, which is a significant portion of the people I dealt with. I agreed with them on nothing, and I agreed with the people they hated more. However, I also agreed that they deserve to have a voice. Now the barrier to entry is so low that you can have that voice. And now you, talking here today, you are subject to the marketplace. If someone's offended by anything you say or we say, they might try to, you know, to retaliate against you legally without harassment, and that'd be totally fine. But there's so many opinions. I have to imagine that you would be incredibly frustrated because at Airplay you were incredibly frustrated. That if you had no voice at all, if you couldn't do what we're doing right now, and you just had to hear day after day opinions online that you didn't agree with, and you had no voice, that Gamergate might still be around. It might still be as powerful as it was. So I actually think, you know, there's some goodness that came out of this, in that people just got off their ass and started making their own media. And to me, that's great, because I don't think journalism is a profession as much as it's a pursuit. And anyone can do it. It's not rocket surgery. Anyone can be a journalist. It's not, it's not easy to be ethical, but it's also not complicated.